Hey everybody, and welcome to the Cinefix Top 100, the commercial space tanker long-hauling 100 of the greatest movies ever made across the lonely vacuum of space. I'm Clint Gage, and joining me, as always, she's never once broken quarantine protocols, Alex Stedman, and the man that we all call Mother, Michael Calabro. Guys, how we doing?
Pretty
Great.
good, Clint.
Yeah.
I want to talk about my bonus, though. How come I don't get the same share that you two?
Well, you could have
How come I don't get
you
the
could have
same- how-
contracted for more. To be fair,
How
We
come
all-
I
You'll
we all
get
get
what you're
the contract,
contracted
yeah.
for, same as everybody else.
Yeah.
How come I don't get the same bonus you guys?
you should have contracted for more.
Bullshit.
Negotiate.
It's your fault, is what we're saying.
Those were my mother's dying words.
Those were mother,
full
the
share?
mothers.
It's your fault.
Your mother, who also calls you Calabro. Calabro. Get a full share.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. That sounds... Check out this. You ready? I'm going to go ahead and step on this segue before I even say it. That sounds like an uphill battle. Like it's you against the world, my friend. Just like us here in Season 3. Alone against the world. Do you guys know we're halfway through this season? This is episode 7.
Is this? I think we've done some of the
episode 7 of Alone Against the World.
Despite the fact that you two seem to just strike everything, I think
I never used a strike. What are you talking about?
Listen, we were both... Like, I used the strike. She was willing to use it on the same episode,
I
but
nearly
otherwise,
supported
we're
it.
not...
You know, I think even then, Uncut Gems is, at least we could all agree, the best movie we've struck. And by we, I mean Clint, because I had no part in that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna peacefully disagree. I really enjoyed Three Amigos.
Yeah, again, enjoy.
Enjoy
Sometimes
versus
you watch
favorite
a movie
versus
to-
best.
No, I can't wait. I can't wait for you to watch The Substance and date this episode.
Yeah, no, I am excited for that.
Just FYI, we're filming this before Alex has seen The Substance. So once everybody is aware that Alex has seen The Substance, you'll know that this is all... The smoke and mirrors are going to be gone.
I'll tweet it or something, or skeet it rather. I'm a blue sky girly now.
But I am glad you brought that up, though. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping here at the halfway point of this season. You know, these are all movies this season that we've... it's about characters facing long odds, uphill battles. Alone Against the World is kind of a fun, very specific theme that it's worked in a couple of different ways for us. And I will say, unfortunately, because you know I don't like to admit this, Dan's algorithm has done a pretty fair job of programming it so far, I think. Granted, just halfway through.
This is just a weird pick, though, because this is the first one where we're empathizing with some alien who is just trying to fight off these humans
I don't
that
know
just
if I'm-
randomly landed on his planet.
Are you on the alien side? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, listen,
I do-
This is like the don't breathe of like space, all right? Like they just break
Yeah.
into this alien's house and then he has to defend himself.
I feel like I saw a thing recently. So this isn't my take. I saw this somewhere else, but somebody mentioned something like Alien is Die Hard, but from the Xenomorph's perspective.
Wait, so we're saying that so it's funny because with the Anchorman episode we decided it was Veronica Corningstone against the world.
She was the one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not Ripley
In this one, it's a
case.
xenomorph.
It's the xenomorph.
Yeah,
against
I
the
mean,
world.
literally these just
He's not really an underdog though. Is the
these
thing.
flesh
This-
bags
He's the
from,
perfect
from
predator.
the world just land on this random planetoid and then just try and fuck
Yeah.
this thing up.
He's not
guess
exactly
in the
passive
idea-
though. The
In the
xenomorph.
sense that the world means Earth.
Yeah.
Then yes, the Xenomorph is very much alone against the representatives of the world.
Oh wait, I didn't put that
But
together.
listen,
That's funny.
Anyway, all that to say, we're going to get more into this poor Xenomorph's struggle as the episode goes on. But as we did point out earlier, it is important to remember that one of us can strike a movie regardless of what the other two feel about it, and that's all there is to it. Although the person who does the striking does not get to choose which movie replaces it, which is... I've already used mine. We only get one. I use mine on Uncut Gems, as Cal will never let me live down.
You damn right I
But
won't.
should you guys want to strike a movie, which I don't know if anybody... We haven't officially said the title of the movie yet, but we are watching Alien this week. So if anybody wants to strike Alien... Okay, good luck to you on that endeavor.
They might be alone
But-
against the world on that one.
You certainly would be. I feel like I don't want to skip to the end of the episode, but I think the only other bit of housekeeping that we have to get through right up top is just to remind everybody that our T-shirt's on sale.
Yeah, so, just stick it to Clint for vetoing for striking.
Yeah,
what
to Clint.
was
You know, here's the thing, though.
That's like the only good thing to come out of the Uncut Gem striking is we have a pretty good T-shirt to come out.
And
of
you
it.
know what?
Yes.
It died so that Akira could live.
But that's the
That's
thing is, I
ironic.
do think it's incredibly appropriate that the shirt is a mashup of the one that I struck and the one that you guys replaced it with.
Yeah.
So like, if that isn't this show in a nutshell, or on a T-shirt rather, then I don't know what is. That's pretty cool.
It's a good shirt.
Also weird that I'm just finally now putting together. It's a complicated shirt because I'm still putting stuff together about it.
Yeah.
Like
It
weeks
works on-
later.
Yeah.
Like a good movie, it works on multiple layers.
So many
Yeah.
layers, like a frame of film Kurosawa shot. But we're not talking about either Uncut Gems or Ikiru this week. We are talking about another Alone Against the World banger from Dan's Algorithm. And you know what? A real spooky one, just in time for all your spooky Halloween needs, by the way. We're talking about Ridley Scott's Alien. I didn't mean to hold for applause there. Is that-
I felt like you kind of did.
Yeah, you kind of did.
I was either holding for applause or I was honestly giving a breath for the editor to put a sound up in.
Seems she has intercepted a transmission of unknown origin. She got us up to check it out.
A transmission? Out here?
Yeah.
What kind of a transmission?
Acoustical beacon that repeats at intervals of 12 seconds.
SOS.
I don't know.
Human?
Unknown.
1979, Ridley Scott directed this. It's a story of the crew of the Nostromo, commercial towing ship hauling some sort of mineral ore across the cosmos, and their very accidental and very violent encounter with a xenomorph, who may or may not be, while it's inarguably the titular alien, it might be the protagonist of the story. Are we going to have that conversation?
I feel like that's what you were arguing.
No, I mean, I was making a joke.
It is the titular character.
If you want to be a contrarian, I'm sure you could actually make that argument, but it is very clear that Ripley is the heroine here.
And she's a great one.
And she's awesome.
She's a good one.
It's an incredible thing that like this is on the precipice of like the heyday action 80s, and like the first one of those like stars is Sigourney Weaver.
It's one of the reasons why this movie is so special, I feel. Like,
She's-
and
yeah.
what's so interesting, I don't want to jump ahead of us too much. I feel like you don't really get that she's the protagonist until like halfway through the movie, which is brilliant.
It's one of my favorite things about this movie is that she's very much not the main character until basically the end.
Yeah.
Like it is a very ensemble cast, which does some, I think, fantastic things for the movie itself. The other thing about this movie is it's hard to watch this movie now out of context of the rest of the franchise.
Yes.
Right?
Which is kind of a bummer.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a little bit of a bummer because I
We
think
can
you
blame
really
James
have
Cameron
to.
for that.
No, we can blame Ridley Scott for that.
Not really.
Yeah,
I guess you're
or
right.
we can
Yeah.
blame.
We can blame a lot
We
of
can
people.
blame Fox probably.
Yeah.
Now Disney.
General
Somebody
Hollywood.
at Fox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't blame
But
James
I
Cameron
do,
for that at all.
No. Aliens was also great, and like the point about Sigourney Weaver being on the front edge of the action '80s is because like Aliens being an action movie as opposed to the haunted house movie
Yep.
that this one is, like it felt perfectly natural. There wasn't anything weird about that at all because she's just a badass. So
She is a badass.
all of our respective ages are such that we probably could have watched this movie too young for the first time. Did you
yeah.
guys? Is this one of those movies that you watched too young?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember the first time I've seen this movie.
You know what's weird? I'm the opposite. I don't remember the first time I saw it. I know I saw it at least before high school because I just generally remember being really into Ripley. But like, no, I
Oh, you saw this in high school?
I think just before high school.
This is like elementary school for me.
I feel like it was on TV like quite a bit. I
Yeah,
don't know,
it
like
definitely-
censored.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
You don't even really have to censor much in this because like it is a lot. It is a lot of jump scares, and you know it's a melting alien.
There's also a lot of fun stuff like smoky hallways and strobe lights and low lit things to kind of cover some of the seams. So like there's not a lot of graphic outside of one scene, obviously, like the chestburster scene.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of graphic violence in this movie.
Well, Ridley's not really a horror guy, which I think is one of the reasons why this movie's so interesting. It doesn't feel like a horror movie a lot of the time, but when it does.
It does, yeah. And this is also one of those movies that I think that I saw enough of that when I was grown up enough, because I don't remember the first time I saw it, but I do remember the first time I saw it and remembered it, if that makes sense. Like
that
the
does
first
make
time
sense.
I was old enough to like take in the whole movie. Because there's like moments in the movie that were very familiar, and I'm like, oh, that's where that nightmare came from. I remember that now. Like, or it's the same thing with the original Terminator. I saw that when I was really young, and then when I saw it when I was older, I was like, yeah. There's a bunch of random images is basically all I had from this movie. Of all the things that movies can be and can like do, this is my favorite flavor of movie, I guess, if that makes sense. Like it does all of the not that it's scary or not that it's sci-fi or anything like that, but like it feels bigger than it actually is. Like when you really start to look at it. It's from the 70s, which I love, and they had to like all of the tricks that they had to do everything for real and in camera and on a budget are always super sharp. And then it's just incredibly simple. It's a very simple, like the movie is what they describe the xenomorph as being. Like it's a perfect killing machine. It's great.
I think that's why it's so timeless too. First of all, the effects, because I think they lean so heavily on practical. They age so well. You mentioned earlier, like it being spooky season. This is a October annual watch for me. I think it's never going to get old. It's always going to look good. It's always going to be scary. It aged so well. And I would say the same thing for Aliens too. Like I think that the emphasis on practical, there's just something scary about a xenomorph. They made really the perfect creature with that.
Yeah. Well,
Shout
in
out
that
to
era
H.R.
too, the
Giger.
70s, it's the, between The Exorcist and Jaws and Alien and like all of these movies in the 70s that did things practically and they did things creatively to get around, so that the seams didn't show. Or they showed very intentionally. That's my favorite. It's my favorite era of filmmaking.
Ash, that transmission. Mother's deciphered part of it. It doesn't look like an SOS.
Well, what is it then?
Well, it looks like a warning.
I'm actually Googling the budget right now because I really I have.
It was a moderate, but it was a moderately budgeted film.
Yeah.
It was definitely not a B movie.
Yeah. Oh no.
The budget was around 11 million.
Yeah.
10, 11
Okay,
million,
that's a lot.
something like that.
Yeah, that's more than Star Wars.
The only reason this movie exists is because of Star Wars. Nobody wanted to invest in sci-fi and until Star Wars blew up, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, okay, go ahead.
But I like this better than so many other sci-fi movies. I always say, like, outside of Star Wars, I'm not a huge sci-fi girly. I don't know what it is. I prefer dragons to spaceships. But something about this, I think it's just because it doesn't feel too futuristic. The production design just feels so,
Right.
No, it's that used future.
Gritty.
It's that
used
Star Wars,
future.
it's that
Yeah,
Star
yeah.
Wars used future.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Lived in.
Yeah.
In 1979, in its original run, it made something like $80 or $100 million, depending on where you look and who you ask. But the funny thing is like the reason that it took almost 10 years to make the sequel is there's a decently famous lawsuit around, like this is one of the early instances of creative Hollywood accounting, where Fox was like, no, this lost money. And they were like, bullshit. Like, no way did this lose money. Yeah, and it was a lawsuit that lasted for years.
Was the lawsuit over like back end compensation or something?
It was the production company, which is called Brandywine. I was just reading a couple articles about it. There's a production company called Brandywine that was involved that made it, and then Fox was essentially like co-producer and distributor. And Fox, it's not made public like what all the details of it were, but it seems like Fox was doing some stuff where they were like, they were spending and saving at the same time. So they would be like, well, no, we had to spend money on this company to distribute this part of the movie, but it was a Fox-owned company. And so like they were just moving. It's creative Hollywood. It's the Hollywood bullshit accounting, right? Like they claimed they lost $4 million or something like that on Alien, a $10 million movie that made 90.
Yeah, that math
So,
ain't
like,
mathin'.
It didn't math at all, and there was a big lawsuit that lasted for a long time, and it was the they agreed to fund the sequel as part of the settlement of the original lawsuit, if I understand it right. It was all happening at the same time.
That's wild.
How many sequels get greenlit out of a lawsuit?
And you think the sequel would suck in that case, but it didn't.
The answer is probably either just this one or all of them. Like,
So wait a second.
I imagine lawsuits settle quite a bit.
If this movie got greenlit because of a lawsuit, as
Aliens got greenlit.
Aliens
The
got
sequel.
greenlit because of a legally binding lawsuit settlement, where does the what I guess is like an urban legend of how James Cameron pitched Aliens, which is that he walked into like the boardroom, wrote Alien on whatever kind of board,
Put a dollar
chalkboard,
sign at the
and
end.
then wrote an S and then put a dollar sign through the S. Like, did he really need to do that if like the studio was contractually obligated as part of a legal settlement to make the movie in the first place?
I think that if nothing else, maybe it told the studio, it's like, oh, he gets it. Okay, yeah, no,
Yeah.
come on, do your
Yeah.
thing.
James
And if there's
Cameron
one
was
thing
a
that James
yeah.
Cameron has proven, it's that he gets
gets
that
it.
dollar sign.
Yeah,
He
every
really
time.
does. Better than anyone, man.
Yeah.
It won an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. It was up against 1941, The Black Hole, Moonraker, and Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but won for visual effects.
Not a ton of competition there outside of Star Trek.
And The Black Hole was like a big. That was a
but
big thing.
Outside of our coworker Scott, that movie doesn't really hold up.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't anymore.
Wait, which movie?
The Black Hole, Disney's
Oh,
Black Hole.
oh no! I actually weirdly rewatched that, and yeah, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, that movie, that movie does
it's not very
hold up.
good.
I don't know what the 1941 was doing in there, but
Yeah.
Spielberg.
Yeah, it was a bunch of dogfighting. But then it was also nominated for Best Art Design, which it was up against Apocalypse Now, The China Syndrome, Star Trek again, but it ultimately lost to All That Jazz, which I'm not mad
Fosse?
about. Yeah, Fosse got art design. It's the other option, right? The other route. Like
Yeah.
there's the big elaborate sci-fi stuff, or we give it to the Broadway. You know,
I'm actually surprised it won so many Oscars because I feel like it was like
Yeah,
not,
horror doesn't really do that.
Yeah.
no horror. Yeah, but that's the
Not
thing.
an
Like,
obvious
I
one.
mean, it just won the one. It did better at the BAFTAs. It won a few more and got nominated for other things like editing and costume design and things like that. Sigourney Weaver got nominated for a BAFTA as Best Newcomer, which I thought was. I think that's a cool category, honestly.
Yeah. It's a fun one to look back on because, like, oh, she's Sigourney
yeah.
Weaver now.
Yeah.
I mean, she was
Yeah,
then, but
exactly. Turns out now she's Sigourney Weaver.
and she's still.
The other fun thing about this movie, the pedigree of this movie, I think, is the Jodorowsky's Dune of it
Yeah,
all.
I was just going to bring that up. I don't know.
I thought you were going to bring that up a second ago.
Just spoiler. Jodorowsky's Dune is in my top 100 movies of all time. I think that is like one of the best documentaries on filmmaking ever made, and it is a absolutely fascinating story about what could have been. To
Yeah.
your point, and to whoever hasn't seen that movie is all about Alejandro Jodorowsky's failed attempt to get his Dune adaptation off the ground in, I want to say 1973, right around there.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. But in doing that, he is the guy that more or less like found and connected some of the key creatives behind Alien outside of Ridley Scott.
Dan O'Bannon was on Dune.
H.R. Giger was on Dune.
And then Chris Foss and Ron Cobb were the production designers.
Yeah.
And artists. Chris Foss as a conceptual artist is like, it's funny. Like that's, we don't need to talk about that because if it's on your list, you're probably going to make us do a whole episode on it, which is frankly fine by me because it's fascinating. Like they all just hung out in Paris for like a year doing acid and writing Dune. Like it was
Also, be cool to
incredible.
get a documentary on this thing.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah, we haven't had one yet.
If you haven't seen that doc
I
yet,
haven't, yeah.
Jodorowsky is just like such a charmer.
He's either that or he's a cult leader.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
He could
to-
be both.
He could be both. Ridley Scott kind of did the same thing that Jodorowsky was planning to do, right? Which was like gather a bunch of talented people together and just kind of stay out of their way. Which Ridley Scott did that to an extent on Alien because like H.R. Giger's design of the xenomorph and everything that I've read, Ridley Scott was very not that he was hands off, but he was like he came in at the right phase of things. Like he let people do their work, and then he came in at the right phase to like pull it all together and make the movie.
Well, again, Ridley is not really a big horror guy. I said it before, but I think he really needed to like kind of defer to the experts when needed, and he did.
But I don't really think any of these other guys are horror guys either.
Well, yeah, I think I read that Dan O'Bannon wanted it to be like a comedy or something like that. Or
he did Dark Star with
which was a
Carpenter,
comedy,
which was a comedy, and then like Dark Star got him in touch. Like basically, Jodorowsky saw Dark Star and was just like, he's one of my spiritual warriors.
That's my guy.
Yeah, and like brings him into Dune, and then that's when he met Giger, Chris Foss, Mobius, like all of those guys.
Yeah.
But none of those guys are really like explicitly horror people either.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could argue that Giger is, but only because his stuff is so creepy. But according to him, I don't think it is creepy.
But like, I think what makes it a true horror movie is Giger. Like, it's the creature design at the end of the day. Like, I think a lot of the things that Ridley does that makes it scarier, but like, it's just a scary ass creature.
I will say, and I was cruising back through Cinefix to look at when we did Ridley Scott for My Best Shots. One of the things that he talked about on Alien, and I think this is absolutely perfect. You already mentioned this was not a B movie. But what he told us in that was, he's like, Alien was a B movie done as an A+, which I think is perfect. Like, that is absolutely the perfect way to describe this movie. And frankly, one of the reasons, when I mentioned earlier, like, as, you know, is my favorite flavor of movie, like, that's really a better way to articulate it, I think. Like, a B movie done as an A+. It's just like, this is why we like They Live so much a couple weeks ago, you know? Like, it's that there's some schlocky stuff like done with some legitimacy that
elevates the whole
that's
thing.
That's where it's at for me.
You now have 1 minute to abandon ship. The ship will automatically destruct in T-1 minute.
I think like the real hero shot that's like, oh shit, they have a little bit of budget, is definitely the space jockey.
This is the moment where, because everything else is
tight,
you know, it's tight, it's close-ups, it's small hallways that maybe they're shooting, you know, they walk both directions down it and it looks like two different hallways. Like, you know, they're doing things like that. And then obviously even the visual effects, like, they're done real, but they're done with those, you know, that late 70s Douglas Trumbull printing elements on top of each other kind of things.
Is this the only crane shot in the movie? It might not be, but it's the only one I remember.
Well, and this is why this is in all of the other things that they can do on the cheap in this movie and get mileage out of, to place a bet on this shot. Because I've also read that they had to like talk their way into using this shot. It was too expensive for the studio. So they only built one wall of the studio to begin with. They only built a set looking this way to save money. But to place a bet at this point in the movie on, you know, everything else is a matte painting in the background or miniatures or things like that. But this one, we're going to build this whole set and we're going to have real people on this set. And then we're going to boom up like the most elaborate camera move in the entire film on this shot. And like, they made an absolute meal out of this shot. And it's the one shot in the entire movie that truly elevates this movie from, you know, like, they did it on the cheap, there's nothing particularly spectacular about it, to like, this is like, they're working with the full tank on this.
Yeah. Because like everything else is like kind of like handheld, or it's like really, really tight. I mean, like, it's very seldom in this movie, if at all, outside of this one shot where it's like looking down on the crew, because they're getting that, like, the camera's able to get that far away. To your point, like, Clint, even when it's like they're on the surface of like the planetoid walking toward the ship and stuff like that, what is so good about practical effects is not how good the practical effects are, but how they use different technology and, you know, the Jaws effect of like the thing isn't really working, so we have to kind of like hide it and cheat it in a way, and using other tech outside of the prosthetic, or like outside of like the thing itself, to mask it. So like the way that they get around like the spaceship and stuff like that is you don't see the spaceship, you're seeing the video feed of the spaceship, and it's like cutting in and out, and it's snowy and stuff like that, and all of that kind of like hides the seams and makes it feel more authentic, you know? And it's such a well done use of budget, because it gives you the scale that you expect out of an A+ movie in a B- way that most people don't really notice. And then one time, just he's like, we get to splurge once.
Well, it's funny, and I feel like the purpose that serves is now we kind of have this giant alien world, but like before all the sequels and prequels were made, it was just this, and there wasn't a lot of world building. I feel like just putting that in there just makes it feel so much more real. And like, oh no, this is something that is actually happening. It's funny too, because I feel like the rest of the movie almost looks like a documentary. Like, it just feels like someone sitting there with a camera.
Well, that's because Ridley Scott literally is.
Yeah.
He cam-opped this movie too. Like, he operated.
And
a
it
camera
looks like it. It's just a guy with a camera.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a small movie. Like, you really have to, like, you know, look at it to realize that it's not as big as maybe you think. And that's the other thing too about like the big wide shot of the spaceship as they're walking up, and then cutting into the camera mount scene. Like, it's little things like that. He got to use the same footage twice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's cheap, you know, and he used it for an effect. And I want to say even the sound design in that moment too is you hear Lambert's voice clean, but then you hear Kane's voice kind of through the radio. And so it's Lambert saying like, let's get out of here. I don't want to do this. And Kane's like, no, we've come this far. We have to go in. We can't stop now. Like that whole thing. But he's off in the distance and Lambert is closer. And so we're like in Lambert's helmet freaking out a little bit.
Speaking of weird sound design choices, you know what? It's never really struck me before until this literal time of watching Alien is the sounds computers make. Like, they're electric. They don't have to make noise, right? But like, he deliberately has them, like, each character has a sound, like it's being typed out by a typewriter, but it's literally just a screen. Like, you know, like,
when the letters are coming across, it's like,
it's like the ticker, like it has like a ticker sound, and like all of that just does such a great job of just like creating anxiety. And like, you know, like even when the computer just turns on while everybody's awake because it gets the code or the like intercepts the signal that sends them. The fact that he has the computer, and then Ridley's like, I just can't sit on this computer for like 2 minutes. Like, what happens if I just had a helmet sitting on a rack like right behind it, so it's like reflected on that, and it's just like cutting back and forth, and it's just like all these beautiful shots that have literally nobody in them, just to cut away.
He's got a great eye.
He does have a great eye.
He says it all.
He says it all the time.
That's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his work, of course, but I love the fact that 2 for 2 on interviews with Ridley Scott on Cinefix, where he said, you know, I've got a great eye.
You know, if you got it, flaunt it. You know,
he knows it. Yep.
He knows.
Well, you know, I was born with a great
though.
eye. I've got a great eye. No, he's not wrong at all. And in fact, the shot from my best shots that he chose for Alien was this opening shot. These opening shots floating through the hallways of the Nostromo, the empty hallways. And what I think is great about these shots is, like, again, the context that we have for this franchise. Like, watching this movie as though none of the other Alien movies exist, like, it's 40 more minutes before we meet the alien. Like, these are tracking shots through spooky hallways where there's nothing to be spooked by yet. And so, like, these shots aren't about the alien. Like, these shots are about the Nostromo, and about, like, none of this is natural. All of this is dangerous. None of this stuff is designed to keep humans alive. You know, like, this is all an unnatural environment to exist in, because, like, this is eerie. Like, these opening shots are creepy. And then, of course, we see them wake up from these pods, and it's like they're being, you know, artificially born or something weird like that. Like, you can pull on that thread all you want, but, like, these opening shots just floating through an empty spaceship, there's no context for an alien yet anywhere. There's no context for danger other than the ship itself, which I think is fascinating and easy to forget.
I think I hate, like, one of the reasons I hate myself watching the opening shots of this movie too is my mind immediately goes to money. Like, I just think about how expensive this spaceship looks and how high priority the, like, financials of this mission must be. And then, but what makes me hate myself a little bit more is it's like the first thing that they bring up when they start talking. They start talking about money and bonuses. And I feel like that's the conflict of this entire movie. Aside from the xenomorph, it's a corporation putting these people through hell for money, and they're expendable.
Well, it's the conflict for the entire
America.
Yeah. It's the conflict for the entire franchise, even though it gets dressed up as like a weird, like, I want to find my creator before I die complex by the time we get to Prometheus and all of that. It's another part of this movie that I really love is that nothing gets explained too much. You know, this is the opposite Christopher Nolan sci-fi, right? This is the anti-Nolan science fiction. Like, nothing is properly explained, but it doesn't have to be. And that's the performances and the characters. Like, we know who everybody is and where they're coming from and and how they feel about their situation. Like, we know all of that through the performances and through their interactions and stuff like that. We don't need to know where they're from or how they grew up or any of that stuff. And we also don't need to know what it is they're carrying. Like, it's just a very lived in, clearly commercial tanker, and we don't need to know anything more than that. And it's great. Like, the lack of exposition in this movie I dearly love it, frankly. Like, I just
there's just
love how little is explained.
They set up a couple rules, and that's about it. Like, they'll say, like, oh, it's part of our contract that we have to go check it out if we get signs of intelligent life, and that's it. And that's all we need. Just a couple of rules that they tell us explicitly, and we're good.
Well, and also, too, the conversation at the beginning about the money. It's like, we need to talk about the share situation, the bonus situation, and, the bickering about, they're even bickering with each other about it. Yeah. Like, they're mad at each other about it, which is like, they're not mad at the company. Like, they are tangentially, but they're mad at each other. Like, that's where the friction comes from the first half of the movie, which, how relatable is that? Like, that's that is the first thing we get in a movie called Alien is... Yeah. It's great.
I want my bonus. It's great. Yeah. Also, Parker was right. That's a dangerous job, but the mechanic should have gotten a bonus.
He's yeah. By the way, just real quick, Parker and Brett I love those guys.
Oh, I love them.
They're so good. Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton are so good in this movie.
I don't want to spend too much time talking about the other Alien movies because just knowing where Aliens is on my list, I know we'll have an episode about it. But I feel like that's one thing that I feel like the other Alien movies kind of miss out on, especially like even like Romulus. Even if you kind of sympathize with the protagonist and they're like kind of, I feel like no other Alien movie has done as well as filling out the entire crew and making them these really great archetypes. And Parker and Brett are big ones.
They're
for
so
me.
good.
Yeah. The Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of.
Oh, totally.
Just like,
yeah. And even like the first thing we see is Harry Dean Stanton just kind of be like kind of aside to Yaphet Kotto about like, you bring up the thing, the thing. Yeah, absolutely. They're such a wonderful little team. They make me so happy in this movie.
But then, like, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but then Parker ends up being like the second biggest badass in this movie too. Like,
yeah.
Well, the sooner we patch this thing up and get out of here, the sooner we can go home. This place gives me the creeps.
This film won Best Visual Effects, and we talked about how like it was up against 1941,
Star Trek.
Star Trek is the one that's important here, right? And the reason why that one is important is because the special effects on Star Trek were done by John Dykstra, who did the special effects for Star Wars.
Yeah, we've mentioned that name before.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He's a heavy hitter.
What Star Wars brought to the table on special effects photography was being able to move the camera in heavily comped shots, like all the exteriors. So the guy that invented that, right, worked on the movie that wasn't this one, that subsequently lost the Academy Award to this one. And I want to talk about some of the scene, like the one sequence in particular where they disengage from the larger ship and go down to the surface of the planet, how they do it with the computer, like with the computer navigation systems to give you the sense of motion and how really well done that is. This movie functionally operates on the 2001 A Space Odyssey model, right? Like all of the exterior shots are locked off, like the camera doesn't move, and only things that move in these things are like the ships and stuff like that, which basically means that the camera was like on a dolly being pulled back, so it's just like it made them look like they were getting bigger or smaller regardless, right? So like when you look at this sequence, it's always like the ship moving a little bit, the thing gets disengaged, like these ships or anything that's moving, it's only moving on one axis in one direction. And when you need to give the sense of a complex dynamic movement, like rolling on its side or something like that, it cuts to the CGI screens like this. So you see like how the screen is like doing that turn. So it's like, oh, the ship is turning, but it's not really. And it's so seamlessly done on what could be considered old technology that it still holds up, and it's still like completely seamless to the viewer.
I just can't believe this movie is as old as it is. Like every time I watch it, I'm like, how was this not made 10, 20 years ago? It's insane. It looks so good still.
Yeah, it's just using like 2001: A Space Odyssey tech in a post-Star Wars world, and the fact that it is so meticulously shot and edited together, and all of these shots are like doing like a lot of heavy lifting to get the sensation of movement on the smallest budget possible to offset the technological prowess that was on a big budget movie like the Star Trek movie at Paramount. To still win is just on another level.
The way that they show the terrain changing on the surface, instead of like, I mean, this is the thing where it's like we can't afford to show a mountain range.
Yeah, we can't afford a miniature.
The model of the miniature of the mountain range isn't going to look quite right, or it's not going to look very good, and we can't afford to do it anyway. So like, how are we going to show that? And the answer is in this little readout. We've established this ship so thoroughly, and the way that all the tech works, and the way that the crew interacts with it. And then this is all part of it. And then you also get the opportunity to cut that corner of like, I can't show the surface of this planet. It's all just going to be like a smoke machine and a miniature. But I can do this cool little, graphic readout of what the surface is, what the topography is doing as we're landing and everything. It's really sharp. It's again, like this era of filmmaking, I think is some of the most creative we've ever had.
And like the less you see, I really do feel like the scarier it is. Like not knowing what's on the ground, what the rest of this planet looks like. It's kind of like the horror thesis of this movie. Not seeing it is often scarier than seeing it.
I mean, that was the 70s too. Like, I mean, that was The Exorcist, and that was Jaws, and that was all of them.
I think I remember actually seeing somewhere that like they were pitching this to studios as Jaws in space, which is so accurate. It is Jaws in space.
Yeah. It's a haunted house movie. It's a monster movie. It's doing a lot of things. It's a sci-fi movie. There's like some socio-political stuff with the way they're dynamic with the company. There's like, it's doing a lot, and it does it all with a light enough touch that you can get it all. And it's one of those movies that can be about any one of those things. Like, what's your favorite monster movie, or what's your favorite movie about corporate greed? Like, Alien can be the answer for both of those.
It's like you said, it doesn't feel like a big movie, but it is a big movie. Like it just feels very intimate just because of the way it's shot, and ultimately it's about survival. But like, yeah, it's all about all those other things.
B movie done as an A+.
That's such a good way to describe it. Ridley sometimes knows what he's doing.
He knows, well, he knows exactly what he's doing, which is pretty great. But I will say the one thing that's important about this, and it speaks to Ripley as a character too, is the moment where she refuses to let them in.
Yep.
Where she's following the quarantine protocols. What I find great about that moment is, number one, it makes her unimpeachably correct for the rest of the movie. She gets slapped, she gets yelled at, she gets threatened, like all of this stuff. What I find fascinating is there's never a moment where she's like, "See, I fucking told you."
Which I am not strong enough. I would be like, "I was right, guys."
Exactly. Yes, honestly, that's one of the most engaging things about this character to me, is that she never went after that pound of flesh. Like, she was never like, "You guys deserve this. I tried to keep this from happening. And like, this is all your fault." Like, she never says that, which is incredible to
Again,
me.
She is stronger than me. But no, the other reason I really like this character and this moment for this character is I feel like she's an unconventional hero, not just because she's not like a big, strong man, but because I feel like a conventional hero in this moment would be like, we have to save him, let him in. But she's doing the smart thing and following protocol and saying, no, this is like, we have to follow quarantine on this one. She is just like no frills, just pragmatic and smart. And I feel like in the horror genre, we always talk about how stupid protagonists are. Ripley is not stupid. She is really, really smart, and it rewards her by making her the sole survivor. And I love that about this movie, and I love that about Ripley.
And I do think that all of that stuff leading to her being sort of the, one of the original final girls, right? Like, because Halloween was also this year, right? 79?
No, it was the year before.
It was the year before, 78?
God, what an era.
So, like, the final girl sort of being born right here in this era as a trope. And then, like, all through the slasher movies, and even Scream put its finger on it about, like, that sort of got mapped onto sex. Right, like if if you have sex, you die. Those are the rules according to Scream. But then, like, here's a version of it where it's like, no, she did the right thing. She was just doing the right thing, and maybe it was a tough choice, but she did the right thing, and she gets to live. Full stop. That's it. Like it's just a better version of it, I think.
I love this scene and how it establishes her as like a pragmatist, because that's the only reason she gets to live is because she's just smart.
And she's the one that ends up saying, like, especially to on the other side of the coin, you got Lambert, who freezes up and can't move, and which I also understand.
Well, I love Lambert as a character because I feel like she is 90% of us. Like, that is how most of us would react in that scenario. Not to jump ahead too far, but after one of my other favorite scenes is Dallas's death. And after that, she's like freaking out and she's like, we have to do all this and this and that. Ripley is who we all want to be in that situation, who we all think we're going to be. But Lambert is who we would mostly really be, most of us, if you're being honest with ourselves.
Exactly. There's a moment with Lambert later in the movie where there's a look on her face that's just like, I know I was wrong, but I'm not about to admit it, and don't ask me to.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
There's a moment where I project a ton onto that one reaction shot, whether or not it's actually there or not. Like what I see in that is this a person who's very scared and very aware that they had a hand in creating the situation that's about to kill them, but also mad that they might have to answer for it.
Yeah. Again, I feel like that's what a lot of the Alien movies lost. They building out not just the final girl, the Ripley, but the whole entire crew. I feel like everyone is firing on all cylinders in this crew. Like, and then you kind of have like Kane and Dallas as kind of your more typical hero types, and then that gets subverted a little bit later. It's just a good crew.
We're clean. Let us in.
What happened to Kane?
Something has attached itself to him. We have to get him to the infirmary right away.
What kind of thing? I need a clear definition.
An organism. Open the hatch.
Wait a minute. If we let it in, the ship could be infected. You know the quarantine procedure.
24 hours for decontamination.
It could die in 24 hours. Open the hatch.
Should we talk about chest bursters?
Yeah, do we want to talk about the hatchery first? I like that scene for one reason. That sheet of light.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just that...
The blue fog.
No, not even the fog. It's just the sheet. Like, there's just that, like thin layer of light that separates the eggs from, like, the top. And, like, you could just see it right here. It's just...
Yeah.
And, like, all the shots are, like, them, like, leaning over or just, like, in between it. And I don't know how they found that light, but it is so cool and makes such an awesome dramatic effect.
Yeah.
Because it's also the only real color in the shot because, like, everything is so dark.
To the point about it being Jaws in space. Like, there's above the surface and below it.
I do really like the acid blood reveal. First of all, what a cool feature for a monster. Oh my God. Like, and I don't even know where they got that. That's not something they ripped off from something else. Having acid for blood. And it's what I really like about the escalation of the monster in this movie before you even see it is you just start to gradually learn how dangerous it is. Like, you have this face hugger on Kane's face who, if you try to take it off, the tail wraps around his neck, it's in his throat, and you can't cut it off because acid. Like, it's such a good monster. Yeah. It's such a good creature.
And I mean, investigating it right along with them too is like there's so little exposition that we're learning stuff right along with them.
Well, it's kind of endearing too to just like watch them go level by level and be like, oh my God, it's still going. It's very relatable. And like we said, they're just mechanics in space. They don't know what's happening.
And the nice part is too, is like you could focus on the alien because we spent the beginning of the movie just doing like dead pans throughout the entire environment. So the movie doesn't have to communicate the spatial aspect of the environment that they're in because we already know it. So it's just like, all right, let's focus on how the alien is going to change the equation here.
I will say also one of my favorite shots in the movie is just when they try to take it off and the tail wraps around his neck tighter. Oof. It's claustrophobic and terrible.
Creepy.
I love facehuggers. They're the worst.
All right. Well, I don't know that there's anything left to talk about until we get to the chestburster.
Chestburster.
Oh.
Which I think the chestburster scene is... Obviously, they did it better in Spaceballs. But the fact that they open the scene with them... They all feel good for the first time in the movie. Like, there was a split second in the opening scene where they're all having breakfast or whatever before they bring up the bonus situation. But then here, they're celebrating. They're drinking beer. They're eating. They're talking. They're, griping about the food and like all of this super relatable, look at all us friends being here. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the chestburster thing happens. Like, you feel safe. You feel okay for the first time in the entire movie. And then the chestburster happens.
You know what else is really cool about the chestburster scene as well, outside of the obvious, is the way that they cover Ash in this scene. Like, they do it very subtly, but he has the last close up before like they like pin him down to the table, and it's very clear, hindsight being 2020 on like second and third viewing, that he knows exactly like what's gonna happen here. We'll talk more about the reveal of him being an android and how the company is like, pulling the strings millions of miles away. But like the fact that like he knew what was going to happen without, or maybe he didn't even know specifically what was going to happen.
He knew what he was going to do should something happen.
He knew, he knew that his
it's like
job
he was clicking into the mode.
The alien.
Well, what I like about the whole Ash thing in the first like 3/4 of this movie is I feel like a bad twist is a twist that you can't see coming. And like from the first shot, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like even when they're in like the pods, he doesn't start to breathe until everyone else kind of starts moving around. Like, I just think that's such a nice touch. They do so much foreshadowing.
Even the scene where he just kind of like does the like just does like the little like just gets like a
does
little
a weird little jig before he sits down in the seat.
Before he like before he sends them walking to their deaths.
No, but I think doing this at a dinner table too is so smart, because I think we've all had I feel like you kind of have those moments at a restaurant where like you're just having fun and then someone starts choking and it becomes like, oh God, I don't want to like make any noises if I'm choking, but like it's such a relatable scene, and then it becomes immediately not relatable the second the blood starts coming from the chest. It's so...
They kept this creature design hidden from the cast. This was all their first time seeing it when they were shooting it. The first time it went to burst out, it didn't rip through the shirt. And so like there wasn't a lot of blood spray. And so everybody kind of gathered around a little closer. And then the second time there was a lot of blood spray. And so Lambert was not expecting to get hit. And there's the behind the scenes footage, that full take, she's freaking out and scooting back. And then she falls down. She slips in the blood. And she falls down, and then she stands up and realizes they're still shooting, and then gets back in. Apparently it was another one of those things where they went to a butcher 3 days ago, and they got a bunch of like gizzards and stuff, and like it was gross in only the way that 70s movies were allowed to do gross things like that. Sort of like the RoboCop hamburger bucket. Yep. That turned into the guy from splatting on the windshield, and then just having this little dude sprint out, and then Ash is amazed by it. Nobody knows what to do. Which is maybe the best part of this whole scene, is this shot at the end where everybody's just standing there. They don't have a clue what just happened.
No, I agree. I love that shot, because I feel like if you were a less restrained filmmaker, you would have people like screaming and saying like, what do we do? The fact that they're all just standing there and like, Parker holding a knife, shaking a little bit, like that is the most relatable thing. Just that, oh my God, what now? Like we're hovering over this dead body, whatever just skedaddled off. Like, what do you do?
Something
it's the most human reaction.
Burst out of our friend.
Yeah. And he's gone now. We don't know where that little guy is. Like,
well, and to that point, like we talk a lot about, or we did on Anchorman, right? We talked about the buttons of scenes, and the fight scene in Anchorman being sold by cutting back to the office and him saying, well, that escalated quickly. This is another one of those things where, like, yeah, the restraint to show, it's like, no, you know what the perfect button for this is? Like, everybody was happy and having fun at dinner, and then all of a sudden this terrifying thing happens, and then the perfect button for this is silence and shock and confusion. And, like, that's to book in something this dramatic and something that would become as iconic as it has. Like, this is the movie. Like, the chestburster thing is probably one of the most famous things about the movie, outside of maybe the close-up of the mouth with all the water. Like, that's the shot that I would pull for B-roll first, but the chestburster's right there behind it.
I'll be curious when we get to movie list, because I think this is genuinely among the most famous, not just horror movies. I feel like this is one of the most influential scenes ever.
Well, and that's the thing too. I don't know that you can get much argument about this being one of the most influential horror movies and one of the most influential sci-fi movies of the last 50 years.
Alien touches on both, right? There's so many movies that are sci-fi movies that are about the evils of, like, artificial intelligence or, like, the horrors of aliens. And, like, right out of the gate, this one's both. Mm-hmm. It's just like, well, what happens if there's aliens and androids?
What if the aliens are bad and also people?
Yeah.
And the people make it worse.
Yeah. But there's, like, the motives behind all of it. It's just like, yeah, the company doesn't care about you or your job. They just want the profits. Like, okay, yeah, no, I'm in. I get that.
Yep.
That's why this
I
really
understand this movie wholeheartedly.
Yeah. It's a very alone against the world movie, because you're alone against xenomorphs, and you're alone against the monster that is capitalism.
Keeping with the idea of this is a movie about aliens and about robots. So the alien, obviously there's some pretty intense, I think it counts as body horror, something popping out of you.
That 100% counts as body horror.
I think it probably counts as body horror. The way that they treat the reveal of Ash as a robot, I think is treated equally as scary as anything that they do with the xenomorph in this movie.
Yeah, it's so creepy. Oh my God.
This attack on Ripley is freaky, because, like, we now know he's again, this is another enemy that we now have to, that we didn't realize we had to worry about, but now we do. But then the way that Parker goes after him and knocks his head off, and then he starts flipping around, like, it's a terrifying scene. Like, because all of a sudden there's this other monster that you didn't, that was hiding.
And he's been there the whole time.
And I think the cool thing about Xenomorph and Ash is I feel like they're two different kinds of scary, where Xenomorph is just pure power, pure, like, I need to eat or impregnate you, whatever. Whereas Ash is unsettling. Like, it's just creepy. First of all, who kills someone by shoving a magazine down their throat? What an insane way to try to kill someone. But then, yeah, when he's rolling around and the fluids are popping out and his face, it's so weird and gross.
Like, it's easy to kind of roll Ash in as an obstacle, right? This is another obstacle that they have to overcome. It's like, no, he's kind of a villain in his own right, and, like, a monster in his own right, in the same sense as the xenomorph. And particularly with the way that they shot this scene, the way that he goes about attacking. Granted, he's scarier in that he's got logic and motives and things like that the xenomorph doesn't have, that are now a new level of, we have to fight against this. But, like, it's terrifying.
Well, also the way that he tries to stop Parker too, he, like, tries to rip his heart out. Like, he presses his fingers into his chest. That's an insane way to kill someone also.
The way that they film him as on equal footing as the other monster in the movie is perfect.
It's a great visual representation of there is no hope. He's a robot, which is like the quick realization, and then the slow realization of he's been there the whole time for this.
Well, and also right before this happens, Ripley was talking to Mother, and that's where she heard from Mother, like, all other priorities rescinded, crew expendable.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that is one of my favorite shots too, is she's on the computer and you don't hear or see Ash. You don't know that he's there. And then she sees that on the screen. And he's just smiling and there's no sound
cue.
There's
he's kind of like,
he's just sitting there smiling, and there's like, it again, restraint. It could be like, and he's been there the whole time and he's smiling and he's terrible. No, it doesn't do that. He's just there being creepy. It's amazing.
I just love the look on his face. Like, he might as well have been saying, like, what you doing?
Yeah, exactly. You know, he's got this like shit-ass grin on his face, like he's a kid. Like I don't know. It's just such a good reveal, and it's like if there was any question that Ash is not on their side before this point, let's put that to rest. I think it's also too. You're talking about like this kind of representation of like there being no hope. The way that this movie ramps up in the span of like
10 minutes.
Yeah, 10. Like because you have
because the chest burster's at the halfway point.
Yeah.
Like right at the middle.
Yeah.
It's like, so even like, because I have like some of the timestamps in front of me, even going from like the chest bursting, and then soon after that you have, I think you have Brett's death soon after that, and then you have Dallas's death soon after that, and then you have the Ash reveal. That's in the span of like 20 to 30 minutes. And it's so like kind of not slow, but it's so restrained up to that point, and then it's like, oh no, you're screwed all of the sudden. It's so like unconventionally paced that way, but I really like it.
I will say there's one moment of sound design at the end of this movie that I think is truly next level stuff. It's after they kill Ash, and they go their separate ways. Like Lambert and Parker go to find like the coolant tubes, and then Ripley is going to like set up the shuttle, right? And where Lambert and Parker are clanging around, and it's loud, and they're dropping canisters, and they're shouting at each other, and they're and then it'll like hard cut to Ripley like looking for Jonesy. It's very quiet. It's very and so you go back and forth between these two moments, and then that's when the Xenomorph shows up, sneaks up on Lambert and Parker, and gets the two of them, and there's big loud score when that's happening. But then after, it's when Lambert dies. We see Parker die in super tight shots and quick little cuts and things like that. But then when it's Lambert's turn to die, we're on Ripley.
Yeah. And
it's quiet again, except she's hearing Lambert die on the radio, right? Mm-hmm. So Lambert's death is not about Lambert dying. Lambert's death becomes about Ripley now being by herself. The end result, I think, is just this fascinating use of sound design to really communicate emotion and stakes and all of these other things.
The thing that really strikes me about like the Ripley becoming the main character is I feel like she's not the main character until a solid hour 15. Actually, I think not until Dallas's death do I think she's truly the main character. But when she's the,
so I think it's even later than that. I think it's after Ash.
Yeah, that might be more like the last
once
like
she's
30
in
minutes.
Charge.
Yeah.
She's fully in charge for like that last 20 minutes or so. But
Yeah.
either way, no, like that first, she's not the focus of any group shot. She's just kind of in the background of a lot of shots. She doesn't get more close-ups than anybody for the entire
in that
first
pod
2/3
scene,
of the movie.
Like you're following Dallas and Kane. Like you barely see her in that opening. But the
she's
thing
just
is,
part of the crew, same as anybody else.
She's just a pragmatic person doing her job. But like the second, like once it does decide that Ripley is the main character, she is the main character, and you are with Ripley and nobody else. Like, and I really think that's an interesting choice. And I feel like I haven't like seen a horror movie do that in the same way. And I don't think I've ever.
Because you end up spending the first 15 minutes of the movie like figuring out, learning about who they are and seeing them interact with their significant other and getting a phone call from their mom and getting like setting up all of these different setting up all of these different
you got to
things.
turn down all the sex, not do the drugs. Just
every first act of every horror movie is just about how are we going to creatively show this person not having sex
and not doing the drugs,
not doing any of the drugs.
Yeah,
not even some of the drugs. That's not okay. You can't do any of the drugs.
No.
Yeah, no. It's like, how do we spend the first act showing this person not having fun?
Yes, exactly. So that they can survive. They're the person that needs to have more fun later on. Anyway, like all these other people that are having the sex and doing the drugs, they've lived.
Yeah.
Point is, no, Ripley's not the main character of this movie for like 2/3 of it. It's great.
But when she is, she really is, and I think that's what you're kind of saying about like the hearing Lambert die. It's like it's not about Lambert. We need to be with Ripley in that moment. Like we'll mourn Lambert and Parker later. We just need to be with her in that moment. So smart.
Dallas's death, Tom Skerritt's death. That's about Tom Skerritt.
Yeah.
That's not about, we get to see Tom Skerritt be terrified and Lambert react to it in a way like that's more about her, freaking out a little bit more than if anything besides just Dallas's death. But no, by the time Lambert dies, she does not matter. We are with Ripley.
I want to talk about Dallas's death because it's also one of my favorite scenes. It's so quiet. It's when he's going down that tunnel with the flamethrower and he says, can I go back now? It's like, and it's so human because it reminds me of like, I don't know, when you're at like a haunted house with your friends or something and you're goofing off and it's like, oh no, I'm scared now. I don't like this anymore. I would like to go. Yeah. And then you like, and he's like the kind of conventional macho hero, like, you know, and even he's like, no, I would like to go. I don't want to die right now.
Yeah, well, and even like Ripley volunteers to go, and he's like, no, I'm gonna go.
He's being well, that's what I'm saying, because like Ripley is not the conventional hero. She's not gonna sacrifice. Like she did volunteer, but it's like he's being the hero in that moment.
It's also great how they built tension too, of like he's being stalked. 2 dots on a screen getting closer and closer, and it's just the visual tension of 2 dots getting closer and closer instead of like, I feel like what would be like a more traditional thing is like you'd see like the vent, like, and then you just see something quick like zoom across the screen and you'd hear like the like is it moving in the vents, but it doesn't do that. It's just him in there like talking to Ripley, talking to himself a little bit, and it's just 2 dots just getting closer.
Well, and Lambert keeps asking him. He's like, "Are you sure it's not there?" And then he puts his hand down and he picks up like the xenomorph residue. Yeah. Like that's his only hint that maybe he's not super safe right now. And then the best jump scare of arguably movie history is when the xenomorph pops up.
Which, by the way, I do really appreciate that the alien and the ship was designed so that the alien would like blend in with the ductwork and the tubing and everything that's in the walls, and that was specifically done, I guess, for the jump scare at the end, which I think is a close second.
Let's just talk about how cool the flamethrower is. I mean, like,
guys, have you talked about flamethrowers yet? Like, they are cool.
They are.
I mean,
cool.
dude, they make a flamethrower and a cattle prod in this movie.
Yeah. Well, it's like, what can you do
like
when
homemade
acid blood?
I feel like that was all just to get to the flamethrower, as opposed to, well, it has acid blood. What could we kill it with? You know?
Yeah.
Well, it's not like they have machine guns or anything.
Because it would be like
they don't have those until the sequel.
Yeah. It's just such a great weapon for 2 reasons. A, it lights the scene, and it is a very, very good dramatic lighting effect. And B, it's not a weapon you normally it's not a weapon you normally see in horror movies. You know, it's normally like a gun or a knife or something like that. And it also has that like vibe of like Torch in the Cave.
Oh yeah.
You know, vibe to it.
Yeah.
And it's just it's such a cool aesthetic.
It really is. And you can only see so much.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Flamethrowers are rad.
Flamethrowers
They're
are rad.
they're the only thing I want to quickly.
Smoking looks cool. Flamethrowers are rad.
Fire generally, smoke.
Yeah, that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
The only thing that would have been cooler if she was like, she realizes she's gonna die to the alien, so she pulls out a smoke and lights it with the
She lights a
flamethrower.
smoke.
Yeah.
Or that would have been great is if she sees the alien and she's just hang on. Yeah. And then she takes her time enjoying that last smoke.
Yeah.
I'm honestly shocked that didn't happen in Aliens. That seems like something James Cameron would do.
I'm like incepting the fact that it did right now. I'm like, which character did that? No, I'm pretty sure. Was that Bill Paxton?
Yeah. It's just like it's just like they're accepting that
Vasquez
they're gonna have to
that.
die in order to win. So it's just like, all right, let me light this.
100% a Vasquez move.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to bring up before we get to the end is I really, really like the Brett. A lot of good death scenes, but Brett's death.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like it's before Dallas's and it's the first official time.
The first one after the chest burster. Yeah.
Yeah, and you get like the first glimpse at the grown xenomorph, which they grow so fast, those little guys. But I think the thing I love most about it is you don't see Brett die, you see the cat's face. Like I again, restraint. And I've seen people say that the cat looks evil in that scene. No, if you know cats, that cat is terrifying. That cat is like, if I stay very still, the xenomorph won't get me. It's just it's so restrained. It's so good.
I'm just gonna stay here and wait to hiss if it does see me. I guess we can talk a little bit about the end, the very end. In that it's sort of a, the trope of you think you kill the bad guy, but he's not dead. He comes back for one more thing.
The only shot of this movie that I think genuinely looks bad, genuine knock here, is when it goes like when the Xeno gets blasted out of the airlock and it's just kind of like flailing around.
Oh yeah, that's a little goofy.
Like that looks a little cheap.
If anything in the movie doesn't hold up, I'll give you that. Yeah, but it's strange though because it's like I don't know what zero G necessarily.
Well, that's
looks
the thing.
Like,
I think it looks.
like,
you look kind of goofy when you're floating in space.
Yeah,
I
but
guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. It does.
No, but it doesn't look great.
Yeah.
It doesn't. But this is a stretch, right? Of all the things, like my favorite saying of all, be where you are. Of all the things that stretched and trying to do a big budget thing on a small budget thing, like that's the moment where the seams really show.
What I really like about this scene too is I feel like you could have gone the route where like Ripley is trying to like physically fight the xenomorph and it's this, but no, she gets away because again, she's smart, she's pragmatic, she's
she has to outsmart
grappling
it.
yeah, like it's I don't know, there's a version of it that's much less restrained that it could have seen
like
her
maybe a version of it with her putting on a giant mech suit and getting into a fist fight with it.
Listen, when it works. Both approaches have merit.
Yeah, no, but in this movie,
it works.
I can imagine. I wonder if there's a moment where in a draft it was like, and then she, karate chops him out of the airlock or something like that, and somebody's like, "Get out of here!"
Yeah.
No.
After all
like, I
this,
can't. If that idea,
karate chop.
if that idea was entertained at all, it was for half a second.
Yeah.
Like it didn't. There's no way that anybody bought that.
No, but the grappling hook, man, that's a smart move.
All right, let's talk about movie lists.
Yeah.
Honorable mention in top 10 sci-fi. It didn't get the pick. Can't remember why, to be perfectly honest with you. Probably Cal had to have gotten an honorable mention in your practical effects piece somewhere, right?
Yeah, it definitely got an honorable mention, but also
it got talked about.
Did not take the prize.
The one that I could find that for sure got the pick was the top 10 movie monsters of all time.
Nice.
So it was on that list for sure. The Xenomorph deserves every bit of that pick, and probably I would have been willing to put it on 2 picks to be honest. I love me a Xenomorph. One
of the best designed monsters of all time.
It's so scary. It's so powerful. I love it.
It was the whole reason why we're still making Alien movies.
The Xeno, by the way, got a shout out in the animatronic section of the top 10 practical effects.
I'm surprised.
There's just a dude in a suit.
Yep, and the creature section. So it actually got it in 2.
I'm surprised that Ripley is not on. Don't we have like a best heroes list? I feel like Ripley.
Yes, we do.
You know who we didn't
bet
talk?
She's on there.
Yeah.
You know who
talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to confirm that.
You know who we didn't talk about in
Who?
this? And their key contribution. So H.R. Giger may have designed the Xenomorph, but Carlo Rambaldi is the guy that brought him alive.
What do you mean? Like,
who did all of the
actually built it? Yeah.
Built it and did all of the mechanics of it. It's crazy to think that like the Xeno is probably that guy's like number 2 achievement because his real achievement is E.T.
That's the guy that like made everything out of his garage in Reseda or something like that. Right?
There is an incredible like local news interview with him in like the 80s from KTLA, and they just go to his house and he just takes them into the garage and it's just like, look at all my memorabilia, and it's just like they sit down for like Sunday dinner with the Rambaldi family, and it's an adorable interview.
Oh, that's
but
sick.
Like he has this really great quote in it where it's just like movement is the soul of the creature, and that brings up a lot because it's like him that figured out the mouth jaw mechanic.
Oh, that's such a good mechanic. Yeah. See, that makes my, because we're getting close to it, that makes my MVP pick hard.
Ellen Ripley was on the original best movie heroes of all time list.
Okay.
I redid it at some point, and I think
Ripley,
I made some. I redid it with a different sort of thematic kind of through line of the video, and she didn't make that one for whatever reason. But she's in the original one for sure. Shall we Torf?
Let's do it.
Oh, let's Torf. Torf number 1. The alien was covered in copious amounts of KY jelly to give it a slimy effect, and the tendons of its jaw were made from shredded condoms.
Where Torf is going to be tough.
Yeah.
More like tough. Am I right? I'll show myself out. Yeah. But I am going to go true.
It's true. That's true. Yeah. That's a fun fact. All right. We'll try to get you on the next one. The blue laser lights, which we talked about, Scene in the egg chamber of the alien ship were borrowed from the British rock band The Who.
Also true.
Who were practicing their light show for an upcoming tour on a nearby stage. True?
Yep.
Love it. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
No, it's actually false. And that's a common myth. But there's a shred of truth, as there frequently is.
True-ish.
True-ish.
As we like to say.
The film's art director, Roger Christian, was friends with fellow art director Anton Furst, who was working at Hologram Effects workshop near the studio where Alien was filmed. At the time, Furst was working with The Who, designing the lighting setup for their upcoming concert. Christian believes that Furst, who passed away in 1991, likely brought the same projectors he used for The Who down to the studio for Alien.
Oh, and the guy's dead, so
Yeah.
you can't confirm or deny.
Yeah.
It's the best kind of myth.
All I'm gonna say is this: even Alien Romulus, the official page is peddling that quote unquote myth.
What? That's hilarious.
So
Wait, it's not verified. Is that really the official page?
it's got 4 million subscribers. Yeah,
Oh, it
it's
is verified.
It is verified. So all I'm trying to say is the actual like Alien Romulus page is pushing the eggs in Alien were eliminated with lasers borrowed from the band The Who.
They
Let me call Mr. Disney on that one. We gotta correct something. Okay, so this is a wild Torf, man. Session of Torf. Okay, the original draft title was Starspawn. True or false?
Star Beast, I think.
Yeah, I think Clint's right.
Damn it. Can't get anything past you guys.
Well, I knew it was going to be another one of those half truths. Yeah. No, that's that in all of the just like looking at Dan O'Bannon and you know, between Dark Star and there was another star something. Did he work on Star Wars a little bit too?
Who, Dan Bannon?
Because he also did visual effects stuff. He also did like effects
Wasn't
work
he like
too.
wasn't he on Really Hard Times when you did this movie? I thought I remember reading somewhere that he was like homeless for a time or something.
Probably. I mean, he was coming off of living in Paris for a year doing acid with Jodorowsky at this point, but he can't have been that bad. Anyway, all that to say, yeah, Star Beast, I think is what it was called.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
That is correct.
Great.
It is a literal half
No,
truth.
false.
Oh, yeah.
Literal half truth. Half of those words are true.
Yeah, it was Star Beast. It was only after rereading his script and that he noted how many times the word alien appeared and realized that it was a perfect title. It works as a noun and an adjective, and surprisingly, it had never been used as a film title before.
Oh, that it cleared legal? That's good.
All right, maybe we'll get you with this last one. One more Torf. Meryl Streep was the original casting choice for Ripley. True or false?
I'm gonna go false.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm just gonna go false.
I'm gonna say false. I feel like maybe like he might have voiced it. This is what year of the Deer Hunter? Is the Deer Hunter 79?
Deer Hunter's around 79. I mean, Sophie's Choice would have been mixed in here somewhere. Like Meryl Streep was a name.
Yeah, Meryl Streep might have been too big for this. Is what I'm trying to say.
She might have been. Well, she was probably on the up.
I feel like the Deer. Is this the year of the Deer Hunter?
Oh,
I think it was when I was looking at who they were up against in Academy Awards. I think it was either this year or the year after.
Oh, the Deer Hunter was 78.
Yeah, 78.
So it was the year before. So
the year
Streep,
before.
I think Streep won the Academy Award for Deer Hunter, didn't she?
Either way, I'm going false.
We got you on one. It's true.
It's true.
Really?
Yeah.
They could.
That's the tricky thing about those. Like, that's the tricky thing about those questions that was casting choices. It's like I'm sure somebody wanted. Yeah, everybody wants the most famous person of all time, whether it was seriously considered or whether or not they ever read it, or who knows.
Yeah. Yeah, it came down to Sigourney and Meryl. This is kind of sad. Ultimately, Weaver was offered the job because Streep was mourning the death of her partner, John Cazale, at the time of casting. So that's sad. But, yeah. But she was originally...
John Cazale, who did nothing but Best Picture
Bangers.
nominated.
Yeah, so... That's,
Fredo.
Yeah. Also, I didn't realize this. Harrison Ford turned down the role of Captain Dallas. That would have been interesting. Having just played Han Solo, he was concerned about doing another sci-fi film. I don't know that I would have been.
Space.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done with everything.
Yeah.
He was probably crotchety at that point too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the producers did want Meryl Streep, so I think definitely she was a name.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, we got you on one, so I'm gonna consider this tour a success. And we got the 20th Century Fox social media manager. Sorry to that person.
Yeah, apologies to the Alien Romulus social media manager for dragging you under that bus. Who's your MVP?
Ridley. Sigourney does an excellent job, but she comes in late, and this movie bangs from frame one.
So this is my hardest MVP pick that I think I've done on this show, because I want to kind of give it to Ridley.
Because I'd give it to Ripley in Aliens. So like when we do Aliens, that's definitely
and I think and I agree with you, and
MVP.
That's why I didn't give it to Sigourney this time.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna. I'm saving it because again, knowing what we know about the algorithm, we will have an episode about aliens.
Got it. Top 20 aliens.
Yeah. We know enough. We know too much, arguably. No, my MVP, and I'm gonna say his name wrong because I've said it wrong the entire time. HR.
Is it Giger?
It's Giger. That is my MVP pick.
I'm giving it to Giger too.
Yep.
I think that this movie, to talk about the space jockey scene as much as we did and the design of that space jockey, to talk about the design of the xenomorph being as iconic as it is, I think that this movie doesn't become a franchise with a cheesy looking monster. Ridley did a great job, and maybe you can play the game of like, well, Ridley gave Giger the space to do it, and he gets some credit, but I'm giving it to Giger.
Ridley photographed it and figured out how to put it all together, and I do think that is part of it.
Either way, I'm giving it to Giger. He's also so funny to listen to. Have you ever watched an interview with H.R. Giger?
Yeah,
he's such a weird little gremlin of a man.
That tracks so hard.
He's
that tracks.
Yeah, he's check it. I'll see if I can find some, but he's in Jodorowsky's Dune too. Yeah. So watch that. You'll get a little bit of Giger, but he's just this weird little German guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. He's such a fun little weirdo. But all that to say, he's my MVP. I think without that, because just look at Predator. Like, they were savvy enough. The best choice anybody ever made on Predator was reshooting the stuff that they made with the shitty Predator costume
to fire
to get Jean-Claude Van Damme out of that costume. It looked like a weird praying mantis. They redesigned the Predator to what it is.
I thought they said it looked like a duck.
It was something. I don't know. It's awful, whatever it is. But the point of it is the Predator became a franchise on the strength of that creature design. And the same is true for Xenomorph. Anything weaker than what we got from Giger is I don't think it does the same business.
Agreed.
That's exact same reason why I made him my MVP.
Great.
Exactly.
Great.
Crushed
High
it up.
fives.
Also, I think it's cool when you can give it to like I don't know. Like, I was so jealous.
Production designer? How many times is the production designer going to get it?
Yeah.
Right. And like, I was so jealous when you thought to make the costume designer the MVP of Warriors. And I was like, oh man, next time I can do something like that, I'm going to. So yeah, this
mostly
this
it's just the other times I do that though, I'm just being contrarian.
Speaking of the Warriors, not for nothing, Walter Hill did a pass on this script.
I did read that when I was doing research.
He's the reason that Ash exists in that whole plot line. Like, that's his contribution to the story.
I mean,
so
that's a good contribution.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, and Walter Hill is still a producer on every Alien and Alien adjacent property since.
Still collecting checks.
Like, his name's on Romulus. He's like, I don't know what. I think he was part of Brandywine, the company that is involved in the lawsuit. I think he might have been involved in that somehow. I don't remember. It might be making that up. But point is, Walter Hill engineered his way into like never having to work again. So
good for him.
Cal, we got time for one more segment? Do you think?
Oh, I haven't thought about. There's so many options.
Of course we do.
What do you want to do then?
If we had to recast this movie with Nicolas Cage in some role, who would he be? I got two options for you.
There's a few. You could I
really only think there's two. I think modern Nicolas Cage could do a good Ash.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And younger Nicolas Cage would have been a great Harry Dean Stanton replacement.
Yeah. Those are both good.
Yeah.
I immediately went to.
Yeah, you think?
It seems a
Like
little small for him.
John Hurt's Kane. Well, I don't know that. I mean, listen, he dies early, but in the most iconic scene in the whole goddamn movie.
They do a really good job of making him out to be the hero, and I feel like you would kind of believe that more if it were Nicolas Cage. So it would be almost kind of like a better twist if he were the one to die.
Yeah, it's just a classic Steven Seagal and executive decision move.
Yeah.
I don't know, the Harry Dean Stanton.
I really like him in this role.
Working class hero, but I don't want to mess with either Yaphet Kotto or Harry Dean Stanton. Like those guys, as I've said, love them. They make me so happy.
I think Nicolas Cage could do the working class, you get a little bit of Raising Arizona in there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that. It's
I mean, he's got the Hawaiian shirt already.
Yeah.
Got some grease under his fingernails. Like, I get it. Like, I can see it. But I just love Harry Dean Stanton so much.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that we had 3 different answers and we're not really fighting about any of them, I think that means that Nicolas Cage doesn't belong in this and the movie's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But speaking of how perfect it is, where did you guys have it on your lists, if at all?
I had it at number 37.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just barely didn't crack the top 50, surprisingly. 51 for me.
51. Okay.
So Aliens is
I'm
higher
told-
for you?
I'm told Dan did not have it.
Typical.
Of
but
course.
I had
This
it all.
is a great movie. Why would it be on Dan's list?
Yeah. No, I'm really excited about it. I had it at all the way up at number 14.
Wait, so Dan's the only one who's wrong. This is
Which-
amazing.
And I'm trying to think. I think it was the case with Star Wars that was just the 3 of us joint.
Was
Yeah.
that not
Normally
Dan?
Normally it's some combination of like 2 of us and Dan, or just 1 of us, or whatever. But like just the 3 of us, I don't think we've done that much. But no, I had it at number 14. I love this
It's
movie.
got to be high.
It's
So
gonna
it's
be
top
high.
20
It's
for
so
you.
good.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Alright.
that's a really. I don't want to spoil.
Where do you think this is?
Okay, so let's do some math.
Here, you want me to go first? You always end up having to go first.
Yeah, you go first this time.
Was it 14, 51, and 30 something? 37?
37.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That all adds up to
I think
to
that puts it
20.
in the top 20.
I'll take low 20s.
Yeah,
I'll take low 20s.
Low 20s.
I'm gonna
say the teens.
I'm gonna take the under. I'm gonna say
You going
yeah,
teens?
under.
Okay,
I'm
going
taking the
teens.
under.
Yeah. All right. Ready? 16.
That's high.
Hell yeah.
That's high.
Number.
Closest to my score, so that means I win.
Is that all right?
That's it.
What was
Listen, I
it, you
just
were
made it
14? So wait, let me just get this
Yeah.
straight. Hold on. Back up here for a second.
up. One
you
better than
mathing?
Independence Day. That's right.
That is exactly.
Really one better than
You read my mind. So you did rank
Wait.
Alien higher than Independence Day.
Wait, so where was Independence
Correct.
Day for you?
15.
Number 15.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. Okay, the
It was
algorithm.
the first episode of the show that we did.
Yeah.
But
We think-
I was the only one that had
Yeah.
that on my list, though. So
Yeah.
Yeah. We
But-
call those Dan picks.
those Dan-ass picks.
Yeah. Those
Yeah.
Dan-
Independence Day is my Dan-ass movie.
Yeah.
So number 16.
That feels right. Top 20? Hell yeah.
So
yeah.
Alex, you gonna shove this movie out of the airlock and put it out of its misery?
I'm not. I mean, the only person who would is Dan, and he doesn't get a say. So
He doesn't get a vote. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
a second-class citizen.
He's already out the airlock.
he doesn't get his bonus.
Yeah.
It's just 2 away from where I have it on my list. So I feel great about keeping it at number 16. I feel great you guys aren't going to cut it. I feel great about Dan not having a say in it at all.
The fact
That's
that
probably
Dan,
what I feel
it's
best
not
about.
on Dan's list and only not Dan's list makes me feel so good about
Yeah.
it.
I wonder if how many movies are just the 3 of us that aren't
Probably
sullied
not
by
many,
Dan's.
to be honest. Because you have I don't know. I feel like you and I hate not to insult you, but I feel like you and Dan have similar tastes sometimes.
No, I know we do. It's upsetting, honestly. I'll consider it a treat then when it's just a 3 of us, because I'm pretty sure it happened on Star Wars, and then happening on Alien. That feels good. I like it. But that is gonna do it for us this week. So thank you for watching Alien with all of us alone against the world. It's another scary one, so it's good to have a hand to hold in the middle of this movie, you know. But thank you to the crew of our Nostromo, producer Tayo Yakin, technical producers Mariah Franzen and Amir Rakib, and DP Jamie Parslow. Dan, of course, we kicked out of the airlock. I think I said that already.
Yep, we did.
Get straight through with a grappling hook. Yeah, he's he's the one part of this show that doesn't hold up. But come back next week as we continue our season 3, Alone Against the World, and we're swinging back into spoof territory with OSS 117, Cairo Nest of Spies. How about that for a surprise entry on the top 100?
Yeah, it's a bizarre one.
That'll be a first for me.
Well, here we go.
Here we go.
Well, spoiler alert for the end of next episode. It's not on your list.
I'm so bad at that.
All right. Well, until we get there, stay safe, be good, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy your trick-or-treating while you're out there, too.